I'd like to ask everyone now if we could take another moment of silence, because I know there's been many moments of silence for Congressman Lewis, who certainly was a true American hero and champion. Thank you. The latest COVID-19 numbers as of yesterday in Massachusetts, there were 414 new cases, bringing the total to 117,098 people. There were 15 new deaths registered yesterday, bringing the total of people who lost their life due to COVID-19 to 8,595. These state numbers combine both confirmed and probable cases. There was some late reporting by one hospital group that contributed to yesterday's increase in cases. It doesn't appear to be consistent. It was due to late reporting of numbers. Boston's numbers as of yesterday, we had 35 new cases for a total of 14,093 cases. There were no new deaths registered yesterday. The death total in Boston is 730 people. And to all the families that are still struggling with COVID-19, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And to the families that lost loved ones, we want you to know that you are as well in our thoughts and prayers. A look at the broader trends here in the city of Boston. On a 7-day average of daily new cases remains very low. A 7-day average of positive test rates also remains very low. And the number of COVID patients in our ICUs as well remains low. It appears to be a small uptick in the state numbers, and we're watching those closely, but nothing that today causes any concern here in Boston or the Commonwealth. The bottom line, for a city of our size, Boston is doing incredibly well. Compared to the rest of the United States, Boston and the Commonwealth are working extremely hard to make sure that we keep these numbers down. We got to where we are today through hard work, sacrifice, coordination, and love for our city and each other. And I want to thank everyone who has been part of wearing masks, physical social distancing, following the protocols, doing everything you need to do. We need to continue to do that on a daily basis. The pandemic certainly is unprecedented, but we've strengthened our ability to respond to the crisis over the years. Our shelter systems, our public health systems, our food access systems, our safety nets, our responsible budgeting, prepping for the recession. We've been working on these things for years, so it's helping us, quite honestly, get through the recession in many different ways. It's a lesson for all of us to continue to move forward. We have to keep planning for the future. We have to keep closing the equity gaps so that people are less vulnerable in times of crisis. At a time when we lack national leadership, Boston and its people are showing a better way forward. I am, as I said earlier, incredibly proud of the city for staying strong and keeping our priorities at the forefront. We're going to keep moving forward as long as it takes. I know that many people still are also feeling the stresses of what's happening right now in our city, in our state, in our country. As I said in the very beginning of this, I'm asking people to take your life a day at a time. We will get through all of the feelings that people have. We also have, if you need to talk to somebody, in the city of Boston, we've added extra supports for people that are expressing or feeling some mental health issues or stresses. You can call 311 and we can help you get connected to somebody to talk to. Please do not feel that it's a burden. Do not be embarrassed by it. It's something that we all need at one point or another. The Boston Resiliency Fund grants, so far we've raised $33 million. We've distributed more than $24 million. This week and last week, 2 more rounds of funding totaling $750,000 were given out. The money is going to 21 local nonprofits that serve youth, family, and seniors here in Boston. So far, 328 organizations have received Boston's Resiliency Fund grants. It supports their work around remote learning, food access, health care for the homeless, and many other opportunities. The majority of these groups that were able to access the funds were led by people of color, and the majority of all groups were led by women. They are trusted in our community, and we're proud to support all of these different organizations for the incredible work that they have done during the COVID crisis. That's the power and the value of the Resiliency Fund. We will keep harnessing Boston's generosity for the good of all of our communities. Testing, I talked about this at our press conference earlier in the week. We have a new mobile testing team that will be in different neighborhoods every 2 weeks. We're watching the data and bringing this resource to where it's needed the most. It's been in Allston for the last 2 weeks, and over 2,500 people have gotten tested for COVID-19. On Sunday, it moves to Moakley Park in South Boston for 2 weeks. We use $1.7 million from the Boston's Resiliency Fund and additional money from the CARES Act. We've been expanding testing to 20 locations across the city. So with the CARES Act and the Resiliency Fund, we've been able to get testing into many different neighborhoods in the city of Boston. I just want to make a plea to folks. If you feel sick or you've been in a group without distancing or masks, it's okay. We were asking you to get tested. It's quick and it's available to you for no cost. Testing is the best tool, or one of the best tools, that we have to stop the spread of the virus and continue to reopen safely. And we're going to keep making sure it's widely available here in Boston. Food access has been another one of our top priorities since day one. $13.5 million has been spent from the Boston Resiliency Fund invested in food access to date here in the city of Boston. We reorientated several city teams to focus entirely on our food systems, to close the gaps that we were seeing and close any gaps that were out there. We're using every single tool at our disposal, working with many partners who have quite honestly helped us moving forward. We've served nearly 2 million meals to youth and family, and we'll continue that through 91 sites throughout the summer. When you think about that, 2 million meals have been given to Bostonians in the different various locations across our city since the pandemic started in March. We've also delivered food to vulnerable populations. We've delivered more than 1,500 meals a week to our seniors in Boston. At no cost to the city, Lyft drivers have been delivering over 2,000 bags of food. This is helping us feed our most vulnerable while helping us keep our local rideshare drivers working. We've also focused on culturally competent options and assessing people so they can buy food for themselves. 100 food pantries and 18 farmers markets are open right now in the city of Boston. Through the Resiliency Fund, we're providing coupons to be used at all the farmers markets in the city. The Resiliency Fund has also supported mobile markets at 17 different locations. People can use HIP benefits when paying with EBT. We're working with Project Bread to increase SNAP enrollment. I want to give a shout out to Project Bread that does amazing work in the city of Boston every single day. Our Double Up Food Buck program, people get 50% off healthy food with EBT cards at corner stores and daily table locations. Food access is an equity issue and we've been addressing for a long time, long before COVID-19, along with a lot of our partners here in the city. We are constantly working with our partners to strengthen our systems and respect people's dignity. I also would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Congressman James McGovern, who has made this one of his top priorities as a congressman and does a lot of work in the city of Boston with Project Bread and other organizations. So I want to thank the congressman for also pushing on a federal level to make sure that we continue to have access to food for folks. The Boston Employers Forum Series, we have a new program to prepare our workforce for the COVID-era job market. We're hosting a series of virtual panels about how COVID is impacting Boston's biggest sectors. We started with healthcare yesterday, and in the coming weeks we'll host forums on hospitality, construction, retail, and the IT tech industry. They are geared towards college and job training programs and want to prepare people for the COVID-era workforce. Experts share the latest market trends, and they also answer questions for folks that want to get engaged. These are free and open to the public. To register, we're asking people to go to owd.boston.gov. We've always continue to be focused on people preparing for the jobs of the future. The future is looking very different, and we're making sure that we rise up to meet those needs so that Bostonians have access to these jobs. Up at the State House, I want to say thank you to the legislature for extending their session. The House and Senate did it yesterday. I want to thank them on their commitment they've made to the Chapter 70 education aid and to the unrestricted general government aid, UGA. We keep working with them literally on a daily basis, moving forward on some of the most important bills that's focusing on housing, transportation, economic development, environmental justice, and resources for an equitable recovery. I'd like to thank the House of Representatives yesterday in Massachusetts for passing a bill establishing the Fire Cadet Program here in the city of Boston. It was a home rule petition with $175,000 dedicated in the fiscal 2021 budget. It was approved by the City Council here as a home rule petition at the end of last year, and Representative China Tyler presented it to the legislature. I'm hoping that the Senate will take this action up today and pass the cadet program for the fire department. We've had a very successful cadet program for many years here in the city of Boston with the Boston Police Department, and I believe the cadet program here in Boston for the fire department would be one of the first, if not the first, in the country. I also want to underscore the importance of state funding for the city, including special education and charter school funding. This is extremely important as we continue to feel the impacts of COVID-19 on our city resources. A lot of what we want to do with our local and state level depends on federal aid. It's good to see that the U.S. House of Representatives is talking about child care. They passed a bill yesterday adding $60 billion to child care in the United States. But we need more action on a federal level. Our families, our economy, and our future depends on access to affordable, quality child care. Americans are really hurting, and people in Boston are hurting, and they need relief. Unemployment benefits are set to expire today in the Federal CARES Act. The clock is ticking, and we, the citizens of America, shouldn't have to wait any longer. Also on a national level, the census. This morning we learned that the United States Census Bureau will be cut their door-knocking efforts short by a month. This is a major problem here in Boston and across our country. This could lead to significant undercounting, especially for people of color and immigrants in their neighborhoods. Census counts ensure fair representation in Congress. And over the last 3 census counts, we've lost representation in the United States Congress. At one point, Massachusetts had 12 Congress people in Congress. We have 9 today. It also helps us with federal resources, money that comes down that taxpayers in Boston, quite honestly, and taxpayers in the Commonwealth don't have to pay on the state side, with SNAP benefits, Head Start programs, early education programs, affordable housing, community health programs. The best way to fight back and make sure that our diverse city gets fully counted is to participate. It only takes a few minutes. You can do it online by going to my2020census.gov or by phone. You can always contact the City of Boston 311. Census employees may come to your home early as Monday to help us if you haven't responded yet. We need people to fill out the census. Everyone counts equally in our democracy, and everyone deserves to be counted and represented in our democracy. As far as schools, Superintendent Casilius is here with me today, and I'm going to bring her up in a few minutes. She's going to talk a little more about schools. But we're looking at starting schools this year. Keeping our kids safe is the #1 priority. We're taking all of their needs into account. We're exploring every single option for what that looks like. We're not rushing to make decisions because we don't know what the date is going to be a month from now. We quite honestly don't know what the date is going to be next week. We're planning for every scenario, so no matter what happens, all of our students can learn in a safe environment for the upcoming school year. We know that we will not start school this year with all in-person learning. That's a given. Right now, we're focused on all remote learning and a hybrid model for the start of the school year. What we do with it is when our kids do walk through the doors in our schools, we want to make sure that the public health experts say that it's safe and we can do it. No matter what happens, parents will have an option to choose to have their kids fully remote learning if they choose. if we open school buildings. But it's important to remember many families don't have that choice because parents must go to work and someone must take care of their children. For many students, what we're seeing is, what I'm concerned about, is that the learning gap is growing every day that they're away from their teachers and from their classrooms. Some families have the resources to make at-home learning work. Many of our families in Boston don't have those resources. So we must, and we're obligated to explore every possible way to safely bring our kids back to school, especially for students of color who are already facing many challenges. That's why Brenda Casilius, our superintendent, and her team are working so hard to find a way to open school safely. It's about equity. I also just want to talk, the other day the school nurses and some teachers were out here on the plaza talking about making sure about opening school safely. I understand, I haven't seen it yet, but the teachers did a survey, and 67% of part of their union voted that they don't feel that in-classroom learning is the way to go. What I would ask everyone is to join with us in looking at ways of reopening school. From the very first day of COVID-19, we have been on top of it and putting safety at first. Whether it's been shutting down the St. Patrick's Day Parade, making a decision to postpone the marathon, then cancel the marathon, shut school down within 3 or 4 days, shut everything down as we know it. Safety is our number one priority. We are not walking away from that. And I think that having conversations about how do we open schools safely is a conversation we have to have. Today, we are not Florida. Today, we are not Texas. Today, we are not California. Today, we are in a very different place. That doesn't mean that our numbers aren't going to grow, and that doesn't mean that we're going to see spikes and curves again. But what it means is we're taking a day at a time, and we have many people in the school department and many people with our teachers and all of the staff and people involved in a conversation. So I just ask everyone, let's not make an issue out of school opening. Let's think about how we reopen schools safely, if we can. And if we can't reopen schools safely in September, at some point we need to reopen schools safely. But this should not become an issue. Again, we are not these other states where they're seeing surges, and quite honestly, public employees and people are being completely ignored by governments in these other states. You are not being ignored here in Boston. I want to thank the superintendent for the outstanding work that she's been doing. She's spoken from this microphone before, but for all of you that will hear her for the first time today, the superintendent came to Boston about a little over a year ago. And what she was able to do in that time was go out and visit all 125 schools in the city of Boston. She was able to host over 100 meetings in the communities in the city of Boston. She was working on a plan to improve the quality of education in the city of Boston. That plan led to a budget investment of $100 million over the next 3 years. I think it was March 8th or 9th, we had a meeting in the Eagle Room, and we had to make a decision to shut school down. And for 6 months, by the time school starts, we have been responding to the COVID-19 crisis. And the superintendent and her team have been responding in large ways by making sure that our kids get the technology they need to learn online at home. Many of our kids didn't have technology, didn't have Chromebooks, didn't have internet access. She was able to secure to make sure that our kids got that. Most of our kids in our district are on what's called free and reduced lunch. And she was able to set up 65 sites across the city of Boston to make sure that our kids in our schools were able to be fed throughout the COVID crisis, including today. She was able to work with the teachers and work with the administration to make sure that the resources are needed to get out there to our educational system so we continue to move forward. Her background is she's an educator, quite honestly. And when you hear her talk about kids, you see that. She's a parent. She understands the importance of what our district needs right now. I'm giving you this kind of understanding who she is because Brenda Casilius cares deeply about our kids. She's a friend to me. She's passionate about serving our students and our families who have experienced trauma. When I met with Brenda Casilius about coming on as the head of Boston Public Schools, she was talking about the kids in the term, my kids. When you have a leader who uses the word like my kids, it shows you the care and compassion that she has for the kids in our district. I want to thank her for her incredible work. I want to thank her for her commitment to our city. I want to thank her for her commitment in making sure that our kids succeed and our city succeeds. And I'd like to ask her to come up here and say a few words about where we are in reopening and not reopening.